The galactic combat arena fell silent as Cadet Orla stepped onto the crystalline platform. 10 champions from 10 different worlds stood across from her, each a master of their species' finest combat traditions. The human girl looked impossibly small against them, barely 20 standard years old, her regulation jumpsuit still bearing the fresh creases of the academy laundry. Lewis watched from the observation deck, his knuckles white against the railing. His best friend had volunteered for this demonstration, insisted on it even despite every instructor's warnings. The Galactic Council wanted proof that humanity deserved a seat among the warrior races. Orla had decided she would be that proof. Commander Thexler, a towering Crom Knight with chitin armor and 4 blade arms, studied the human with compound eyes that saw in 17 spectrums. He had fought for 60 cycles, won 300 formal duels, and killed when necessary. This soft creature before him, with her pale skin and impossibly fragile frame, offended his understanding of combat itself. The human may choose her weapon, the Arbiter announced, its translated voice echoing through the arena's acoustic fields. Orla shook her head. No weapons. A ripple of confusion passed through the assembled champions. The Vexri envoy, whose species communicated through bioluminescent patterns, flashed a sequence that roughly translated to bewilderment. The Keltorian champion, a being of liquid crystal who could harden its limbs into monomolecular edges, actually laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. The human mocks us, Thexlar clicked, his translator rendering the insult clearly. No, Orla said quietly. I'm just being fair. The first champion lunged before the official start signal. It was the Drackhun representative, a predator species that prided itself on ambush tactics. Its 6-limbed form blurred with augmented speed, claws extending from retractable sheaths, venom glands primed. Orla moved. Lewis had seen her move before in training, in the Academy's combat simulations. He had never truly understood what he was seeing until this moment. The Drackhun's lunge, which would have bisected a Crom Knight warrior, met empty air. Orla wasn't where she had been. She wasn't where any projection algorithm said she should be. She was inside the Drackhun's guard, one hand pressed flat against its thorax. The creature's momentum carried it past her, and it collapsed 3 meters away, unconscious before it hit the ground. Impossible, Thexlar hissed. What did she? 3 champions attacked simultaneously. The Vexri with plasma whips, the Keltorian with crystal blades, and a Hrask berserker, whose species was famous for their pain immunity and regenerative abilities. Sophisticated sensor arrays tracked every movement, recording from angles that defied 3-dimensional geometry. Later, analysts would study those recordings for months. They would measure, calculate, and model. They would find nothing that violated known physics, nothing that suggested enhanced strength or impossible speed. They would see a human girl moving through combat like water flowing around stones, like wind finding gaps in walls. The Vexri's whip wrapped around empty space where Orla's neck had been a microsecond before. The Keltorian's blade carved through her afterimage. The Hrask berserker's massive fist cratered the platform exactly where she wasn't. Orla touched each of them once, just once, and they fell. Thexlar watched 4 more champions charge the human. He was analyzing, processing, trying to understand the pattern. His species had evolved to track multiple threats, to process combat scenarios across numerous spectrums. He could see the heat signatures, the muscle contractions, the weight distributions of every fighter in the arena. He could not see what Orla was doing. She wasn't faster than his species' quickest warriors. She wasn't stronger than the Hrask. She didn't have the Keltorian's blade-hard body or the Drackhun's venom or the Vexri's plasma weapons. She had soft skin, breakable bones, and a body that seemed designed more for distance running than combat. And yet, the 8th champion fell. Then the 9th. Each touched once, each defeated without Orla seeming to strike at all. Thexlar was alone with her now. The arena had gone silent again. He had 4 blade arms, each capable of punching through starship hull plating. He had chitin armor that had turned aside particle beams. He had 60 cycles of experience and warrior's instincts honed across 100 worlds. How? He asked, genuinely curious now. What advantage do humans possess? What augmentation? What genetic modification? Orla looked up at him and he saw something in her eyes that chilled his primary heart. Not aggression, not killing intent. Understanding. We don't have advantages, she said softly. We're weaker, slower, more fragile than almost every warrior species. We evolved on a death world where everything was bigger, faster, stronger than us. Then how? We learned to read the world differently. She moved as she spoke, and Thexlar attacked on instinct, all 4 blades converging on her center mass. A killing strike that had ended the lives of champions on a dozen worlds. Orla flowed between the blades like smoke, like thought, like something that existed in the spaces between intention and action. Her hand touched his thorax just above his primary heart. Thexlar felt something shift inside him. Not pain, not damage, just a touch that seemed to resonate with frequencies his nervous system recognized as important. His limbs stopped responding. He crashed to the platform, conscious but unable to move. Orla stood over him, and for the first time he understood what he was seeing. She wasn't predicting movements. She wasn't calculating trajectories. She was reading something deeper, the subtle shifts in balance, the micro-expressions that preceded action, the invisible language of intent that every body spoke before it moved. Humans had evolved as prey animals who became persistence hunters. They had learned to read everything around them because failing to do so meant death. They had developed empathy, pattern recognition, and social intelligence as survival tools. And somewhere in that evolutionary journey, they had learned to read combat itself. In the observation deck, Lewis finally released the railing. Around him, representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in stunned silence. On the platform below, Orla extended her hand to Thexlar. He took it and she helped him to his feet. "We can teach you," she said, "if you're willing to learn." The Galactic Council granted humanity their seat that day, not because of superior strength or technology or weapons, but because they had finally encountered something they couldn't define, couldn't measure, couldn't replicate with any amount of analysis. They had encountered what it meant to be human, to survive not by being the strongest, but by understanding the space between heartbeats the moment before the strike, the invisible threads that connected all living things in combat and in peace. 10 champions had faced 1 human cadet. None could explain what happened. They couldn't define her because she was something their warrior cultures had never needed to become. Someone who had learned to read the universe itself, one subtle movement at a time.